Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and for today's video, I'm going to be going over some of the retired gear that has been added to Wizard101, but was removed for one reason or another at some point in the game's history. Now, there are some, honestly, like pretty big things that have been retired, and I'm going to be going over them, and I think a good place to start with this would be just undoubtedly with the strangest choice I think the devs have made in terms of, gear and retiring gear, and that is the old Morganthe accessories. And she also dropped stuff like hats, robes, and boots too. Those also got retired, but those weren't nearly as influential as things like the Edge of the Shadow Web, which is a theme for level 99 plus, so basically level 100. It was a great alternative to Darkmoor because the Darkmoor theme would give 16% universal damage, while the Morganthe themes, regardless of school, would give, these themes that gave 17% school-specific damage. So it was technically better in a way compared to Darkmoor if you didn't need the 2-3 extra pip chance and the 2 accuracy on the Darkmoor theme. Now, another part of this that is actually pretty interesting is the fact that these themes gave outgoing healing, and this has really become a problem at Exalted PvP, and I promise I won't go on for too long about Exalted PvP, but basically, if you are a Storm doing Exalted PvP and you don't have this retired athame from years ago, then you might as well just not play, because this athame, for Storm especially, gives 27% outgoing healing. So on top of being a very good damage piece, and it gave some pretty solid pip chance, the Jewel template was also really useful. It was the best outgoing healing athame for pretty much every school, I want to say. It gave varying amounts, but for Storm especially, it gave, I think, 27. For Life, I think it gave something relatively similar. And I don't think another athame has really matched the outgoing healing that the Morganthe theme has ever since. Like, I know that there's some crafted options in early R2. I think the I can't remember what it's called, but there's some options that give like a bunch of outgoing healing and also incoming healing. So it's like a total of 40 plus total healing. But when it comes to outgoing, Morganthe theme was king, and or maybe queen in this case. But this gear was retired in the spring 2022 update when the Merciless gear set got, I guess, standardized is sort of the word I'm looking for here. It's basically they added the Dragonspire and Chrysalis gear sets with that, and the Dragonspire set I'll get into in a bit, but the Chrysalis gear set pretty much it eliminated these. And when they eliminated these, I'm saying they totally switched up the template to look something a lot more like the Merciless theme, except instead of being any good like the Merciless themes were, the damage comparatively on the new Morganthe themes, as well as the rings. I don't have the fire ring on me, but I'm pretty sure I just fed all the rings to my pet because Alpha and Omega and the Mimic and Paradox and all that were just better anyway. But the new themes they don't give nearly as much damage. They also don't give any outgoing healing, which, it's like if you're trying to make a healing build on any school, it's like these used to be the go-to, but not anymore. And that was just sort of, it's like everybody sort of mourned the loss of the Morganthe accessories, but mainly the theme because it was just such a good alternative to Darkmoor. And this, I really hope, gets returned at some point. There was also the these amulets, and these amulets were really good back in the day because they gave these stats. They gave a little bit of health. They gave Pierce and Resist, which was just nuts. Like, Pierce on an amulet, right? It's like, we didn't see that again until Shane Von Shane, and then after that, Wallaru. So, yeah, needless to say, these amulets were very, very good because they gave 2 copies of your school's blade card, but 5% stronger. And these stacked with regular blades, and these were just really, really good going into the 3rd arc. But now it's like the only viable option really for going into the 3rd arc is to still use your Jewel of the Faint that you've had all this time since the beginning of Arc 2, and I just kind of wish that these Morganthe Thame or amulets didn't get removed. I also wish the Thames didn't get removed, but the amulets are what I'm talking about. And the blade cards, you don't really see those on any other amulets at this level. It's like the new Morganthe amulets have sort of become like pseudo Nightmare type amulets, where it's like they give a lot of resist and they give some health, but they don't give any offensive stats, and they just, it's like their item cards are not nearly as useful. I think maybe at best the new ones would give a furnace. So that's that. And the rings, while the rings did get removed, the new Morganthe rings, I don't have any on me, but the new Morganthe rings are actually pretty good because they give, I think, maybe a little less damage, maybe kind of, sorta, but they give crit now instead of block, so that can just marginally help your setup. And I think they give more pip chance now than they used to. So at least the rings, the new rings, are kind of a step up, but there's also just better options at level 100. Whereas for the Thames and amulets, you couldn't really beat Morganthe for either of these 2 pieces. It's like Darkmoor was rather a good alternative, but now it is the de facto piece to go for if you're an Exalted Wizard. So yeah, that just sort of added more to the Darkmoor farming grind. So that is the Morganthe accessories, which I really hope come back. Next on the list, we have the Pirate School Stitch Gear, and this has been retired. I mean, it wasn't like the Morganthe accessories that got retired in 2022. These have been retired since 2011, maybe, I think was the latest you could have gotten any of these. And they are, I mean, honestly, they look so cool. And it's like, there were other pieces of, Stitch Gear from back then too. Like, I know that there was the whimsical Shadow Robe. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find a picture of it, but there were some Stitch Gear options from way back in the day that it's just, they look so good. And I've said this before, but I would instantly switch from my, overused Elegant Hat and Rogue Robe to the Pirate's Tricorn and Cape just in a heartbeat, because they just look so good, especially with the school symbols. And I really wish they would come back. These would drop from, I believe, Crocotopia and Marleybone from way back in the day. And, people have been asking for these to come back for, like, years on end now. It's like me and some of the other people in Extra Credits in that Discord, we have been lobbying for the gear to make a return, even as just a Stitch set, because the reason that these got removed was because the item cards that they gave, just the stats in general, were a little too strong for level 15s to have back in those days. Like, I know the Storm one was giving Stormzilla, which was like a very strong card, but I mean, if you take a look at my pet here that I can equip at any level, that point kind of becomes moot. So it's like the game has really changed, and I do think that bringing back these really cool looking pieces of gear that gave some pretty neat item cards as well, I think that would be really great if they were to bring them back. And I mean, that's just my hope. So yeah, I mean, here's hoping that they do. I like, people have talked to Artie before, and he said that they're sort of on the back burner. So chop, let's get them on the front burner, Artie. So another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was the old Dragonspire sets. And I talked about this briefly earlier in the video, but I think that, like, these old Dragonspire sets are just such a cool part of the game's history. It's like, you can still get the looks, and the new Dragonspire gear set is so much better. like compared to Chrysalis, it is, or the Morganthe accessories and all of that. The Dragonspire set is just so much better comparatively at the level you get it at. than it used to be. But these old pieces of gear, this is a screenshot of Adonis, one of my stream viewers who regularly comes through, so shout out to him. And he has had a bunch of pieces of the life set just forever, and he got them back when you could still farm them, and this was the best gear, like, before Celestia dropped. Like, this was the set that everybody went for. It's like all of the... It's like there were side quest bosses. Like, anytime you see, like, Spider Keeper on a piece of the Dragonspire set, it's like that piece of gear originally dropped from the Spider Keeper, which was a side quest boss. And then, you know, like Victor Snowcrusher's Dex, it's like those were the best back in the day. So it's like the former best gear set in the game from all the way back in 2009, 2010. It's like, personally, I just think it's a really cool part of history. And maybe it's like, if they came back, I don't think it would make much sense, but I do think that it's cool to see people that still have them just around, and I think that's a really, really great thing. So, like, Wiz, just as a game, it's got so much history to it, and I honestly just love looking into the history of this game, and like, just pieces of gear like this are a really, really great part of it. So that's for that. Now, the last thing that I wanted to touch on was the old Diego gear pieces that you could buy for arena tickets, and this is a suggestion from the boy Nathaniel. Shout out to him as well. But he specifically mentioned the war helms, which, I mean, listen, they can look kind of cool. They can look kind of cool depending on, you know, the stitch set you're trying to make with them. But they were retired when 5th Age came about and the blue arena tickets were instituted. And there was a brief period where you could still use your red arena tickets, but I wasn't playing for that, so I didn't get to buy any of the gear. But this was where, like Diego, he not only sold these, but he also sold some, you know, the school insignia stitch gear. I've mentioned this so many times in this video. Frenzy's going to hate me, but he sold, like, okay, let me quickly go to my house and let me grab my Malastair robe. I used to use this way back in the day, before, you know, obviously all of that new gear came about. But if I could just find, okay, robes of Malastair Zyre, right? So let me go back to Bastion or Silent Market real quick, and let me just show this piece of gear off. It's like, I don't have the gold tones to it like I do with my new stuff, but this, the robe that this is stitched to is a robe that I bought from Diego back during, like, I guess the PvP Julo era of 2020. But this robe, it's like, this is, aside from Corporal Tennyson, this is the only place in the game, or it was the only place in the game, where you could get the you know, Daredevil stitch robe for fire. And personally, I think these should come back. It's like blue arena tickets, they don't really have much use these days, outside of like crafting TCs, I guess. But if you could craft robes that like looked like this again, I think that would be so cool. And I think that's a change that I would really like to see in Wiz. And I'm hoping that it's like adding more cosmetic items is sort of what I'm on about. And I think that this would be a really, really great way for Wiz to do that. So yeah, here's hoping that they do. So there's so many more pieces of retired gear that I just didn't cover in this video, but it's like there's so many mounts. I know somebody asked about those, but it would take me, this video would be an hour long if I tried to go over all of those. There's also the goofy looking hamster set that that came from a caramel prequest. I think my buddy Alaboan has that set. He just uses it for one of his stitches. But there's just a lot of gear that's been retired in this game that, and it's like, I think it's kind of like looking into a time capsule whenever you see somebody with like this robe stitch or this a fame or this amulet, and I think that's just really cool. And this game's just got a lot of history. Maybe I'll look more into that, but I feel like that's more Gladrocker's department, so maybe I'll let him take that over if he decides to make a video on that. But for now, I've said my piece. Thank y'all for watching. I've been icegold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more, and I will see y'all later.